Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Today, we're going to be looking at something
Okay.
that I think is very relevant to pretty much everyone listening, and that is navigating career uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be drawing from an article that we found that gives 5 tips for managing career decisions during these kind of crazy times we're living in.
That's a good one.
And we're going to kind of extract those key takeaways that you can use
Yeah,
no matter what field you're in.
absolutely.
So let's jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
The first tip that this article gives is stay informed.
Right.
But it's not just about, staying informed about like the headlines in your particular industry.
Exactly.
What are some of the more kind of subtle shifts that are happening that can really have a big impact on people's career?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is that we have to remember that the world of work is constantly changing. I mean, think about, the rise of automation, remote work.
Right. Yeah.
Even things like climate change are impacting, creating whole new industries. And so it's really about thinking ahead and anticipating those changes rather than just reacting to them as they come.
So where do you even begin to look for these kinds of like clues as to what's coming down the pike,
That's a great question.
besides the obvious like industry journals?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you got to stay up on the news and what's happening in your field. But I think one really interesting thing to do is to follow the money.
Okay.
Like, what are venture capital firms investing in? Because those investments are kind of a peek into the future job market, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And also niche online communities,
Yeah. Yes.
people who are really kind of on the ground in emerging fields.
Yeah, like the early adopters.
Exactly. They're often the ones who see the trends first.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's staying informed. That's the first one.
Number one.
Number one. The second one
Number two.
is be adaptable.
Right.
And I think this is one of those words that like everyone's like, yeah, be adaptable. But like, what does that actually look like?
It's so true. It's kind of a buzzword, but it's like, what does it actually mean in practice?
Yeah.
And I think it really boils down to identifying those transferable skills that you have, but then going a step further and thinking about, okay, which of these skills
Right.
are going to be in high demand in the future?
Yeah.
So, for example, let's say you're in marketing,
Mm.
but you're really great at data analysis.
Okay.
Well, guess what? AI marketing is exploding right now.
Yeah.
So suddenly your data analysis skills make you incredibly valuable in that new field.
So it's not just about what you're good at. It's how what you're good at fits into what's needed
Precisely.
in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's about being strategic
Yeah.
with your skill set,
Right.
thinking about where the puck is going.
Okay. So that leads perfectly into tip number 3,
Oh, yeah.
which is focus on your core strengths.
Yes.
Which again, it's like one of those things where you're like, yeah, I know I'm good at this stuff, but
Yeah.
this is not just a feel-good exercise, right?
Absolutely not.
Like, how do you turn that into something really actionable?
Yeah. So here's a thought experiment I think is really helpful.
Okay.
Write down like your top 3 skills,
Okay.
the things that you're really, really good at.
Mhm.
Now ask yourself, which of those skills is the hardest to replace with technology?
Okay.
Because that is your edge.
I like
The
that.
more human the skill is,
Right.
the more valuable it's going to be in the age of automation.
Yeah, because we're not competing against other people. We're competing against the machines now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And machines are getting really good at a lot of things, but they can't replicate
Right.
human creativity, empathy, critical thinking.
Says-
Those are the things that are going to set you apart.
Okay, so that's a really good, I think that's really valuable.
Advice.
I hope so.
Okay, so tip number 4, and I will admit this is the one that always makes me a little bit anxious, is planning for contingencies.
Yeah.
Because like no one likes to think about like the worst case scenario.
Right. It's not fun.
But it's like you kind of have to.
Yeah, I think the key here is to think about it less as like doom and gloom planning and
Yep.
more as diversifying your portfolio,
Okay.
just like you do with finances, right?
I like that analogy.
So, if you have a stable job, that's great.
Yeah.
But maybe you also start building a side hustle
Hmm.
that's related to one of those future-proof skills we talked about.
Right.
So it's not just a safety net.
Right.
It's also an opportunity for career exploration.
So even if the worst case scenario doesn't happen, you're still growing your skill set.
Exactly. You're ahead of the game.
Okay. I love that.
Okay, and the final tip number 5 is seek professional advice.
Yes.
And I think this is, sometimes people are like, oh, I should just ask my boss or whatever, but it's really about going beyond that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think it's about finding people who are maybe a few steps ahead of you in their career, not necessarily like decades ahead,
Right.
because they're going to be closer to the challenges that you're facing,
Right.
and their advice is going to be more actionable.
More relevant.
Exactly. So think about online mentorship platforms,
Yeah.
even Twitter chats. There's all these low pressure ways to connect with people.
Yeah, that's a good point because I think a lot of times when we think about mentorship, we think about like, oh, I got to go find this person and have like a coffee with them every week.
Mm.
But
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this formal thing.
it doesn't have to be. Yeah. And there's people out there who are willing to share their expertise in much more casual ways.
Absolutely. And you might be surprised who's willing to help.
Yeah.
People are generally pretty generous with their time.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the 5 tips.
5 tips.
So I feel like what we've talked about today is really not just a checklist of things to do, but like a way of thinking about your career. Like
Absolutely.
it's an ongoing process, right?
Yeah, you got to be constantly evolving and adapting.
So kind of a final thought I would pose to the listeners is like, if your career were a startup,
Ooh, I like that.
what would be its mission statement for the next 5 years?
That's such a good question.
Because you are the CEO of your own journey.
You are the CEO. You get to decide where you want to go.
Exactly.
All right, awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah, this was fun.
I hope everyone listening got a lot out of it. And remember, you are not alone in this journey.
We're all in this together.
Keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep building that amazing future.
Absolutely.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.
See you.